Thank you, Professor Novak. And now for Professor Storck.
Mr. Novak and Dr. Clark very rightly asked me some questions about the actual application or establishment of a distributed society, and these are very legitimate questions to ask, for example, about airplanes, medical care, and things of that sort. I think they're all questions that distributists have excellent answers for, and none of them represents an insoluble problem for distributists. But if we're going to talk about distributism as it would actually operate, then I think we have to look at capitalism as it actually does operate, since that is the ubiquitous system in the modern world, the system that distributism is really in intellectual competition with, since socialism is hardly much of a live option today for most people. And I would just suggest that the kind of benign, community-oriented, restrained capitalism that Mr. Novak has talked a lot about today is in fact not what happens. It's not the reason, for example, that unions, that Mr. Novak said, yes, we need unions. Well, in the 1950s, unions represented around, I think around 35% of the American workforce. It's down, I think now, down to around 10%. This is the relentless way capitalism operates. The inequalities in income and wealth distribution that have come around since 1980 and since the mid-70s, actually. Again, this is how capitalism in action operates. NAFTA, in the market, we talked about the market today. The market is efficient. Yes, those who have the money determine what is produced and what is sold. If you have $1 million and there are a million other people who only have $1, well, whose market choices are going to determine what is produced? So that under NAFTA, for example, Mexican farmers will, if the land can be used more profitably to grow export food, which can be exported to the United States instead of the corn that had been traditionally grown there in a market protected by tariffs for local consumption, then this is what capitalism in operation means. We can't look at an idealized picture of capitalism and say, oh yeah, that sounds really nice. It's restrained, there's a lot of community. In practice, capitalism has only been tolerable by the introduction of principles that actually violate the mainspring of capitalism. Karl Polanyi, in his seminal work, The Great Transformation, talks about the establishment of capitalism as a market society as a legal fixture or entity in the 19th century. And he says that it would have destroyed society if it hadn't begun to be modified by contrary principles, by the rise of the labor movement in the mid and late 19th century, by regulation on the part of governments. And Leo XIII, when he wrote Rerum Novarum, he was talking about capitalism as it actually existed. A state, he said, that had reduced the laboring man to a state little better than slavery. Now, the church recognizes what the market society will do in actual practice. And that's what I would just suggest that all of us, should focus on. What capitalism is, in fact, not what some theory of capitalism is or what some kind of restrained capitalism might be. In practice, capitalism has these relentless drives which are bigger than any single individual. It's, as I said before, for example, if one corporation decided to act differently from other corporations, it would most likely be driven out of business because its competitors weren't going to act ethically. But when you have this kind of competition as the legal norm and as the social norm, then this is what it is. You have these fundamental drives in the economy that will determine how people act if they want to survive. And this is what distributists say, this cannot go on. We're in a crisis of capitalism right now, and people are perhaps more open to question it than usual. But if you were a farmer in Mexico, if you were a farmer in India, you would have been questioning it a long time ago. We are relatively affluent in this country. Many of us probably in this room, if we have jobs, we're doing okay. We don't really have to worry about it. We have health insurance. Don't just think of ourselves. Think of people who are in the least advantaged under capitalism. And this is the kind of people, if the Church's social doctrine means anything, we have to think of the common good, we have to think of society as a whole, we have to think of providing frameworks and practices which benefit society as a whole. And this is what distributism wants to do. Thank you.